New jobs numbers out this morning, and they really don't square with the economic golden age that President Trump keeps touting and talking about. The U.S. economy lost 23,000 jobs last month. The final count for May and June were revised down, too. And the labor force participation rate, the number of people working or looking for a job, fell to nearly 61.5%, the lowest in more than 5 years. Those are tough numbers for a president campaigning on an economy that he claims is better than ever. But as usual, the White House doesn't seem too concerned. The spokesman saying in a statement, quote, "The Trump industrial resurgence is on schedule." Where's the schedule? And then there was White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett saying this just a short while ago.
The momentum in the economy continues to be strong. We remain very bullish, even when there's a number like today that we think is temporarily slower than we expect.
For more, I want to bring in Neil Irwin, Axios chief economic correspondent, Stuart Stevens, senior advisor to the Lincoln Project and former Mitt Romney 2012 campaign chief. And Julie Roginski is here on set with me, Democratic strategist and author of the Salty Politics newsletter. Neil, I'll go to you as the econ pro among us. What do you make of how the White House is selling this report right now, and square it with the golden age language that the president is using on the campaign trail?
Yeah, look, they have a point that the numbers are probably not quite as bad as the headlines suggest. So 23,000 jobs lost last month, but 50,000 losses were in local education, which seems like it's a seasonal adjustment, kind of technical problem. Those will probably come back in the next month. At the same time, the underlying story is not ideal. We've seen a real deceleration in job growth in the last over the course of the summer. We've not seen the kind of rapid job growth you'd like to see in a booming economy. And look, there are plenty of good things happening in the U.S. economy right now. But you're right. There is this underbelly of weakness where companies don't want to hire people who have a job can have a decent job, but people who are looking are having a hard time. And that comes across in a wide range of data, not just the pieces that came out this morning.
I also think, Stuart, there is this underlying idea of people are saying, regardless of what the actual metrics look like, they are saying that they are hurting in this economy. And so before we play voters talking about that, because we have new sound of it, and frankly, I hear it when I go on the campaign trail as well, what is the way that this White House should be talking about that? Holding space for the fact that maybe the economy is not in the worst place ever, but also that it is not in the golden age and that voters don't feel that it is.
Well, I think meeting voters where they are is always a good thing in campaigns. The problem Republicans have is that Trump doesn't allow you to do it. A normal sort of political move here is to do exactly what you're saying. Saying, look, I think we're making some headroom here, but look, things aren't what they should be. Gas prices are too much. Everything costs too much. We had hoped to lower prices more, but there's been a lot of complicated issues out there that have stopped us from doing that, but we're working really hard. Those words will just never come out of Donald Trump's mouth, so it's really difficult for it to come out of a Republican's mouth. You can't tell people what you are experiencing is not real. You can't. And a lot of people are turning into Kevin Hassett. They say, well, how should I feel? No, I mean, it's like when you go out, what are you paying for and what is it is? Yeah. They're not going to be saying, well, look, 50,000 of these are just educational. It's a seasonal adjustment. And I don't mind paying $90 to fill up my gas tank. It's a terrible position. And the last numbers I saw, something like, under 30% thought that the economy was going in the right direction, and higher with independents and obviously higher with Democrats. So that ain't a great place to be in.
No, especially given the fact that this was an issue that Trump used to solidly lead and win on. Julie, before we pivot back to the politics, there are Trump voters that our colleagues have spoken to this week about what they are experiencing on the economy. Listen to some of that.
You can't save now. Every dollar you have has to go to gas, groceries, bills, rent. The economy's terrible, and our leadership is not as good as it used to be. He's more doing for him than he is for the people.
He's saying he's doing more for them than the people. And I mean, this is, I think, Trump voters lately reckoning with the fact that the policies and the focuses are not where they thought they were going to be when they voted for this president.
Well, I mean, I don't know what they expected. They saw this movie before the first time around. But look, when you have headlines coming out of the White House that the president wants to spend taxpayer dollars building an arc to Trump, when you're talking about building a ballroom that he claims he needs so he could throw a White House Correspondents' Dinner party in his own house, which he assumes the White House is, not the people's house. When you see an IRS that's been weaponized and a Justice Department that's been weaponized to let him off the hook and not paying his fair share of taxes while the rest of us have to do it, people might come around to the thought that this is not a president who's working for them, but working for himself over and over and over and over again. You can't gaslight people about what they're paying. To Stuart's point, when you go to the store, you know what you're paying. You know what you paid before, you know what you're paying now. When you're filling up your gas tank, it doesn't matter how many times Kevin Hassett is trotted out there to say life is great and the economy is doing well. When you're the one filling up your gas tank and you have a limited amount of money with which to fill it and you can't do it, when you have to buy back to school clothes for your kids and you realize that tariffs are killing you with respect to what you had to pay a few years ago versus now. I mean, all of these clothes are coming from somewhere. They're not necessarily made here. They're paying more to send their kids back to school. So all of this is just reality. And the one thing I know with voters, all the campaigns I've ever done is, as Stuart said, you have to meet them where they are. But more importantly, you can't condescend to them. You can't treat them like morons. Nobody likes to be treated like a dope. Yep. And that's what they're basically doing. They're basically telling voters, don't believe your lying eyes, believe us, after everything that they're doing to enrich themselves. After what they're doing to have Qatar give them a private jet, right? After they're having the Trump organization making $10 billion in the Middle East. After all of that and the way that they're getting richer off the taxpayers, all of their positioning of being in the White House versus what we're all having to pay, the rest of us having to pay, it's insulting.
Well, I think the corruption rides right alongside the economic policy in the minds of voters. Yep. But Stuart, there is the messaging out of the White House, and then there's the messaging from some Republicans. One in particular has gotten some attention this week, Congressman Dan Crenshaw. He wrote in a post on X responding to someone talking about the high price of burritos, where he said, and this is his words, stop whining, get a job, eat ramen like the rest of us did in college on a budget with 4 roommates. The market doesn't care what you think something should cost. Only communists care. He later apologized for that exchange. But I think it begs the question, like, not only are they saying let them eat ramen, they're also saying that anyone who wants a proactive approach to taking down prices is a communist. I mean, like that, how does that track?
Yeah, I love the fact that my old party was all free enterprise and now we're nationalizing Intel. Yeah, that's great, guys. So, look, I think that the reason somebody does this says this kind of outrageous stuff on social media, is to rise in Trump's circle. Because to rise in the Republican Party now is to be the most transgressive. So instead of empathy, instead of saying, look, I know this is bad, we got to do something, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. The president's right. And the president, somebody in his staff reads that, and you get a call, and you've gone up in the Republican hierarchy. And that's what I say, the Republican Party is really functioning in a political science sense more like an extremist movement than a typical American traditional party. Because what do we know about extremist movements? They only become more extreme with higher and higher purity tests. This is how you end up with the Vice President of the United States defending Nazis. And telling people, well, look, you don't know what you're really experiencing. We'll tell you, which is very North Korean. And I don't know. I wouldn't want to be a Republican candidate in November.
Well, and Crenshaw also lost his primary, too. So I guess the political stakes slightly less for him, but still not a great look as a Republican to be saying this before the midterms. Neil, very quickly to you, does this make Kevin Warsh's job harder with a president who wants rates to be cut? The Fed likely to keep them flat, but also these economic indicators feeding into that decision?
Well, it does in the sense that this softer labor market report suggests they may not need to raise rates as much as people had thought going into the fall. So it gives a little more room to maneuver and a little more room to, if the labor market's not as strong as we thought, maybe you don't need to raise rates like some people on the Fed board would like to see. At the same time, Kevin Warsh has a very tricky spot right now. Inflation is too high. It has been too high for 5 years. And what do you do about it if you're the Fed and you have a president who is really going to go after you if you do the normal Econ 101 response, which is raise rates. So this probably puts the pause brake on rate hikes, at least for the moment, but a lot of information to come in on inflation and what they might do in the next few months.
Yeah, in the next few months, of course, getting us closer to the midterms. Neil Irwin, Julie Roginski, thank you both for joining us. Stuart, please stick around.